October 27, 1962. Deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean, a Soviet submarine carried a nuclear torpedo. It was powerful enough to start World War III.
Inside, the exhausted crew had lost contact with Moscow. They had no idea whether the war had already begun. Above them, American destroyers dropped warning depth charges into the sea.
Every explosion shook the submarine. The captain believed America had launched the first attack.
Приготовить торпедные аппараты! Быстрее! Огонь!
One order, one missile, and civilization itself could disappear forever. But this story didn't begin underwater. It had started years earlier, when two superpowers became enemies. After World War II, America and the Soviet Union were no longer allies. They were rivals, fighting for global dominance. Their battle wasn't fought on one battlefield. It spread across the entire world. Every missile built by one side forced the other to build even more. Soon, both nations possessed enough nuclear weapons to destroy humanity several times over. In 1959, a young revolutionary named Fidel Castro overthrew Cuba's government. At first, Washington hoped the new government would remain friendly with America. But everything changed when Castro began building close ties with the Soviet Union. Then, a small Caribbean island suddenly became the center of the world's biggest conflict. For America, a communist ally just 90 miles away was an unacceptable threat. American leaders believed Cuba could become the Soviet Union's front door into North America. So the United States secretly prepared a plan to remove Castro from power. In April 1961, hundreds of Cuban exiles landed on the beaches of Cuba. From that moment, Castro trusted only one nation: the Soviet Union. Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev saw an opportunity that could completely change the balance of power. The invasion collapsed within days, becoming one of America's biggest Cold War failures. If America could place missiles near the Soviet Union, why couldn't the Soviet Union do the same? The plan was simple: secretly deploy nuclear missiles inside Cuba before America could notice. The mission was so secret that it was given a misleading code name: Operation Anadyr. Thousands of Soviet soldiers sailed toward Cuba, disguised as ordinary civilians. Missile launchers, radar systems, and nuclear warheads were hidden beneath ordinary cargo. Every shipment arrived under the cover of darkness. This was to avoid American surveillance. Week after week, America remained completely unaware of what was happening. Deep inside Cuba's forests, construction crews worked day and night building missile launch sites. But that silence was about to end with a single flight over Cuba. On October 14, 1962, a U-2 spy plane crossed the skies above western Cuba. Its mission wasn't to attack, only to take photographs.
Thousands of feet below, something hidden in the Cuban countryside caught the camera's eye.
At first, they looked like ordinary construction sites. They weren't building factories. They were building nuclear missile launch sites. But intelligence analysts quickly noticed something terrifying. When President Kennedy saw the images, the room fell completely silent. The photographs were rushed to Washington. Soviet nuclear missiles, just 90 miles from American soil. Kennedy immediately called his most trusted advisors to the White House. At that moment, the countdown to the most dangerous 13 days in human history had begun. Behind closed doors, every option carried the risk of nuclear war. Some generals demanded an immediate airstrike on Cuba. Kennedy rejected an immediate invasion. Instead, he chose a naval blockade. Others warned, one attack could trigger World War III. American warships moved into the Caribbean, forming a steel wall around Cuba. American warships moved into the Caribbean, forming a steel wall around Cuba. American warships moved into the Caribbean, forming a steel wall around Cuba. Then came the moment the entire world was waiting for.
If the ships refused to stop, the first shots of World War III could be fired.
Sling to Neograida. The Stundas Trimatu systems in meth. Then, the Soviet ships slowed down and began turning back. But the crisis was far from over. October 27 would become known as Black Saturday. It was the height of the Cold War. An American U-2 spy plane was suddenly hit by a Soviet surface-to-air missile. The pilot was killed instantly, and military leaders demanded retaliation.
Russian retaliation!
At the very same time, another crisis was unfolding beneath the Atlantic Ocean. Trapped underwater, a Soviet submarine believed that World War III had already begun. The captain wanted to launch a nuclear torpedo before it was too late. But one officer refused to approve the launch. His name was Vasily Arkhipov. His decision may have saved millions of lives, and perhaps the entire world. Days later, Kennedy and Khrushchev reached a secret agreement that ended the crisis. After 13 terrifying days, the missiles were removed from nuclear war, and humanity survived one of history's darkest moments.